22nd of June 2020, here we are, and I want to talk about Iran, if I can, for a moment. A few perceptions, a few thoughts about latest developments. There's an interesting change, an interesting strategic change in regard to Iran. Hard-pressed as she is, Israel is no longer the priority. The United States is the priority for Iran. Israel has basically fallen off the register. I always like to think of this analogy of the Eye of Mordor in the Lord of the Rings. It's the same for many countries, isn't it? You focus on one, and same for human beings actually. You focus on one big, terrifying issue that frightens you more than any other. And the issue for Iran is the United States of America. The United States of America has been driving hard and hard and hard. And Iran recognizes this. And as a consequence, its whole emphasis now is on the USA. And that means that there are other nations that are vulnerable. For those Gulf states that the US has bases in, I mean, they become vulnerable up to a point to Iran. And you have to remember that Iran is a nation which is a theocracy, essentially. I mean, the trouble with religious leaders is they can be driven by dreams. I'm religiously inclined. I mean, dreams have a big impact on me. Good heavens, yes. I wouldn't share with you what I dreamt about last night, my goodness. Well, I can, I suppose. I dreamt about death. And, things like that affect one if one is a religiously inclined person. And when you have a theocracy that is led by a religious man, then you can see the risks. Is that better than being led by someone with other hegemonic ambitions? Not particularly. It's just a different flavor to things. So Iran sees America as the great enemy. Of course, Iran, like everybody else, is waiting to see an end to Donald Trump and looking at Donald Trump's latest rallies. They may be fortunate, and come January, we may have a new president in the United States of America. I mean, the elections are in November, the transfer of power is in January. Trump can do a lot between now and January, of course. In many ways, Trump has not been a bad president, but he's been bad for Iran. I say Trump has not been a bad president. You'll all shout and scream in horror. But he's not been bad for the Middle East as a whole, in so much as there's been no war on his watch, no major invasion. And you know how US and indeed other world leaders have been in the past with regard to the Middle East. The wars we have seen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria. Syria is an intervention, but it still is our baby. These have not been happy engagements on our part. You could say, actually, in a sense, that Iran has benefited from Trump. At least he hasn't gone to war with Iran. I mean, and it would have been the natural one for him to do if he wanted to continue what we've seen, if he wanted to continue the pattern, and if we were to continue after Afghanistan. I mean, don't blame America for Libya, but nonetheless, the pattern of Western engagement after Afghanistan, we saw Iraq, then Syria, and then Libya, and then Trump's natural addition to the pile of manure in the Middle East, it would be to throw in Iran into the mix of chaos. I'm touched by what an old Syrian told me. Don't think that the opposite of war is peace. Peace and war are just aspects of the same coin, sides of the same coin, same sides of the coin, really. The opposite, well, he was speaking about the opposite of peace, actually. The opposite of peace is not war, it's chaos, he said. And we cannot live with chaos in Syria. And that's what we have. We don't have war as such. And I think he was right, of course. And we've seen an awful lot of chaos post the little wars we started in the Middle East. I have been digressing. We were talking about Iran. Iran's the main subject of this conversation. Anyway, Iran's prime focus is the United States of America. And they're being very careful, very planned about their approach to things. They're going to have a principalist president when the existing president retires. It's his term limits in Iran anyway. He's had his spell. He can't go on even if he wanted to. And I don't think he'd be re-elected even though. You could argue he's done a very good job. So who are we going to have as the leader of Iran? Well, there are presidential elections in 2021 in Iran. Rouhani is constrained by term limits. So Iran has elections in 2021. They're looking at several principalist figures. I mean, they're not talking about an extremist like Ahmadinejad. They are looking at principalist or conservative, if you like, figures. And their options are really Ali Larijani, the former Speaker of the Majlis, or Syed Parvez Fatah, the former IRGC man, former Minister of Energy, former head of Imam Khomeini Relief Foundation, or Mohammed Sadiqia, former head of the Foundation for the Oppressed and Disabled, former government minister, or Mohammed Javed Azari Jahromi, former intelligence officer, currently Minister of Information and Communications Technology, or a remote possibility, but also a possibility, is the former head of the IRGC, General Rahim Safavi. One of these will stand for the Principalist wing and will win the presidency in Iran. So that's interesting. We won't have an Ahmadinejad. We won't have an Iranian Donald Trump, but nor will we have an Iranian Obama, a softie. We'll have a kind of pragmatist, actually. It may be quite good for the world to have such an Iranian leader. Are elections free and fair in Iran? No. They're manipulated in different ways. You select who's allowed to stand, that kind of thing. I suppose it's possible that the masses could revolt and then even the leadership couldn't rig the election completely and there would be somebody else. But given the normal practice in Iran, one of the figures I've mentioned will probably be the next president of Iran, and that will govern Iran's approach. So what are we saying now about Iran? It will be interesting if Donald Trump is not re-elected. There seems to be the probability. His Democrat rival, whose name now has gone out of my head, shows how much of a great impression he makes. Okay, I got it now. Joe Biden. Anyway, Biden, if he can keep his act together, gosh, what an unfortunate candidate the Democrats have chosen. I mean, a lovely, lovely man with visionary foreign policy by and large, but he's just not really a ball of fire, is he? I mean, when it comes to the debating stage and so on, they've chosen the candidate least likely to defeat Donald Trump, to stand against Donald Trump. But I think Biden will probably do it. That's my prediction. And Biden is committed to, and made it quite clear, committed to Obama's deal on Iran. So we'll go back to the nuclear deal. That's very good. At least it's something, isn't it? So I think it's very good anyway. The JCPOA, what a ridiculous name. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Anyway, never mind. It's done and dusted. We have that name to live with, and it'll come back. And everybody will breathe a great sigh of relief. And Iran will rub its hands with glee because it's going to be doing very well at a time when the Sunni world is fighting with itself. You can see countries like Libya, the Ikhwan elements of the Sunni world, Turkey, Qatar, standing against the Salafist elements of the Sunni world, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and so forth, and spilling blood in order to do so. And the consequences are that the non-Shiite Arab world is a mess, really, a mess, and becoming more so. Astonishing capacity for arguing amongst themselves. Anyway, but does it have to be? You don't have to be a face-off with Iran. I mean, what does Iran want? Iran wants Syria, really, at the end of the day, and Lebanon. And Saudi's always had hegemonic ambitions in Lebanon. Let it go. Concentrate on Yemen, and let's get that sorted. There was a deal at one point. Iran gets Syria and Saudi gets Yemen. I mean, why not fix it up again, patch it up again? I don't see why not. I can't see why we can't have rapprochement between Iran and Saudi and each have their own sphere of influence and stop all this bickering, all this energy wasted. Anyway, there's my view. Perhaps I'm naive. No, I'm not naive, actually. I'm quite right. Okay, what else have we got to say about Iran? So the other issue is, for me at least, is Iran in Iraq. Iran has started to behave itself a little better. Iran is causing a little less trouble. To what degree are the various militias actually answerable to Iran? If Iran actually behaved and took its hand away, then would the militias stop jockeying for power? No. And Dark Eyes, Harvey al-Amiri, I still perceive as the ultimate man waiting in the wings to become dictator of Iraq in the long term. You're throwing up your arms in horror? I mean, I'm just being rational, I think, in my view. And whether Iran backs him, Iran doesn't back him, is really quite an irrelevance in that sense. He is a brilliant strategist, a tough and ambitious man, and I think he will prevail in Iraq. And Iran's backing or otherwise is irrelevant. But the shooting of the demonstrators, I mean, Iran could have encouraged restraint, could have encouraged more civilized behavior, did not do so. Indeed, some of its proxy groups, one of its proxy groups, was in the lead as regards the shooting and killing of demonstrators, and it was such an atrocious, horrid policy. Iran behavior. Let's say not in encouraging it, but not stopping it, because it could have stopped it. It has that much influence. It could have stopped it. It did not. It sickens me. I'm sorry, Iran. It sickens me. Could have done better there. Not good enough. No, Iran does not always behave as it should behave. But at the moment, Iran is doing much better in Iraq. It is not being too difficult, not undermining the new premier of Iraq, Mustafa Kazemi. I quite like the guy. I don't know him. He's a friend of friends. I sort of quite like the guy. So I'm encouraged by Iran's more moderate and more reasonable behavior. Don't get me wrong, Iran is still a force to be reckoned with. I'm going to have to stop this. Other things to do. Hope it's helpful.